Test.
Ah,
Try
this
yours.
works. Hello. Oh,
It wasn't me.
okay. Okay. This is the regular meeting of the Palo Alto Unified School District School Board. Date is September 12th, 2023. The board is going to recess into closed session, and the agendized items include conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956-9D2, PAUSD LD 232401, anticipated claim on behalf of student, conference with labor negotiators pursuant to Government Code 54957.6, agency designated representatives, deputy superintendent, chief business officer, superintendent of schools, employee organizations, Palo Alto Educators Association, PAEA, and California School Employees Association, CSEA, and employee discipline dismissal release pursuant to Government Code 54957B1. I do not believe we have any comments on closed session items. Is that correct? Okay, the board is going to recess and we will convene back at 6:30. Just told to do that loudly. Thank you. Testing. Oh, good. Okay, good evening. This is the September 12th, 2023 regular meeting of the Palo Alto School Board. The board met in closed session and took no reportable action. I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the agenda order, but I have a request. I would like to move board operations up to after our reports, our superintendent and student board reports, but before open forum.
I move the agenda with that change.
Okay. I'll second. Wonderful.
Second.
Student board reps, do you have any preferential board vote?
Aye.
Great. Colleagues, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. So we will we'll have our reports, and then we'll go to board operations, and then we'll move to open forum. Okay. Reminder: if you would like to speak to anything not on the agenda, please fill out a comment card as soon as possible for open forum. And if it's something on the agenda, fill out a comment card for that. And we will take comments until the comments start for that item, and then we will close comments. Okay. First thing is student board member reports. Who wants to go first? They just defer to each other. It's so nice.
All right, audio good for everyone? I assume that's a yes. Okay, let's start with just basic orders of the last 2 weeks for ASB. We put on an intramural spikeball tournament. Credit to our athletic commissioners, Malcolm Jinwala and Tasman Johnson. The junior class had a movie afternoon where we showed Top Gun. We also had freshman elections, so congratulations to our newest ASB members, President Katie Kim, Vice Presidents Niev Songhai, and Senators Leilani Chen and Paul Wang. We hit record turnout in the elections for the freshman candidates with a ton of candidates, 5 for president, 3 for vice president, 7 for class senator, and 8 for class representative. Moving on to clubs, we have Club Day starting soon. 120 clubs were approved for Club Day that will be shown over 2 days to get everyone to fit onto our quad. Science Olympiad and Sci-Bowl tryouts are starting soon, as are Pally Robotics tryouts. Speech and debate has novice night for all prospective members next Tuesday. For our programs, theater is currently rehearsing their production of Little Women, and the freshmen in the team cohort had their freshman camping trip with SJPs coming up soon. Sports, we had a football game against SHP, which we lost. However, there were high notes, especially we had tons of student enthusiasm, lots of positive cheering, lots of positive school spirit. The stadium was renamed in honor of Earl Hansen, a former football coach and athletic director. And in support of ovarian cancer awareness, the theme was Teal Out, which was a student-organized event. Throughout the entire sports game, there was a lot of improvement for culture of Pally, which has at times been very competitive and is now becoming a lot more positive. Cross country had its first scrimmage meet at Gunn, and at the Lowell Invitational, the cross country Frosh soft girls got 4th place, and the varsity boys and girls got 2nd in their heat, respectively. Girls volleyball is currently ranked 4th in CCS and 52nd in the state. They have an 8-1 record so far. We're hoping that continues. The water polo team also hosted the St. Francis Water Polo Invitational after issues at the St. Francis School. That's about all I have for you guys.
Hello, everyone. My name's Chris, and I'm the Gunn School Board Representative. As usual, I'll break my update up into a few different sections. So first, with Student Council Affairs, we had our club fair last Thursday and Friday. We were very close with Pally. We had just around 120 clubs. Today, during lunch, we had a Pride Resource Fair where we had a bunch of organizations tabling, and students were able to learn more about them, along with do small arts and crafts activities. I know that they were able to make pins and also get pride flags. Tomorrow, to continue festivities, there will be a queer films showing in our little theater. So lots to look forward to there. And then we're also continuing to plan for homecoming weeks. So the HOCO asking competition is officially live, and our HOCO court nomination process is also underway. And then our class officers are also continuing to plan games, preparing air bands and floats. Moving on to publications, our first color edition of the Oracle is coming out next week. Our September issue is our first full issue after our first day of school issue, and our yearbook program is actually going to Long Beach this weekend for a camp. Moving on to athletics, girls flag football had their informational meeting yesterday, and it'll be considered a club sport temporarily, and it'll really depend on how our league goes in terms of getting them to the status of other sports. Tomorrow, there is a gun versus Pali girls volleyball game. There will be free admission for students, so lots to look forward to there. And as promised last time, I'll try to give an equity update for all of my board reports. So tomorrow, students will have the chance to participate in equity training with Dr. Lori A. Watson, or Dr. Law. And this is for new students, and she's done this a few times, so there clearly is an audience for more people to learn more about the equity efforts that we're undertaking at our campus. There will also be a parent equity night tomorrow, and what's really cool is that Dr. Law has been working at Gunn for around 3 to 4 years, and so the students that she'll be talking about with their parents aren't just generic students. They're actual students at Gunn, and she'll be able to tell the parents of how their children have been able to progress and the tools that they've been equipped with to address equity. Furthermore, students will also be talking about what they've learned and how they plan to make impact in the community with sort of what they've been able to do over the past few years. Finally, looking ahead, next week we have a health fair next Wednesday during lunch, which is super cool just because we get a lot of local organizations to come, publicize themselves to students, and also students are then able to learn of all the amazing resources we have both at the district and in our local Palo Alto community, and that there really are a lot of places that do care for them. That's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. Dr. Austin, Superintendent's report.
All right, we're going to start with exactly what I tell everyone else not to do. A lot of moving parts. We're going to try to show a video. So let's see if we can make this work. Oh, I like it. We're almost there.
We have special activities. We have spirit days, and I'll have a wonderful teacher. Miss Seedman, but her first name, I think her first name is Ali. The teacher is special to me because she helps me with math. I also like writing because I can write about anything, and I like writing about comics, and I like comics. Principal Judy, he helps me when I get hurt, and he calls my parents when I'm not feeling very well, and she let me have a Pokemon card.
Meeting adjourned. That's a good one. I want to thank Alan, and we thought it was nice to have him as our spotlight tonight as we have Barron Park here with us. But I just really love the idea of starting each meeting with a reminder of why we're here and what we should be focused on. It's pretty awesome when you see these guys anywhere from elementary all the way through high school, but the little guys are super fun to see. Few updates, few things here quickly. First of all, I just want to thank both of our board reps. They come prepared. These guys, they're connected with their peers. They see both sides of issues. They're learners. Both of them are learners. They both go to their teachers and they're advocates. They have a pretty good understanding about how systems work, and they're trying to help their peers learn that. I think we always have great board reps here. But these two as a team, just right out of the gate, have understood the role of being student advocates and not just pointing out a problem, but trying to organize places for people to come together and have conversations about them. And I just really appreciate the way you're both attacking this so early. You guys are doing a great job, so thank you. Flag football, by the way, I just heard that one with the girls' flag football. That's huge in Southern California. It took off immediately. And as I'm watching some of the posts and talking to some people down there, it is wildly popular and just a neat thing. So I hope that it picks up steam here. I hope it's something that we can get behind. I've been attending staff meetings. I've been 6 or 7 now. So I go and try to find times to meet with the staffs. Was at Gunn High School most recently, but I've been making the rounds to both elementary and middle school. Gunn was the first high school. I'll be getting to Pally here soon, and really enjoy talking, talking with and hearing from the teachers. I'd say 15% of the time is me giving an overview. The rest is listening and responding and taking input. We're also doing the same through just, I wouldn't call it, it's not a survey, just invitation for people on our staff to write in through Let's Talk, to talk about things that would make their jobs better, put them in a better position to serve our students. And we're getting some great feedback on that. I'm going to be excited about that. I'm starting to break that into themes. It's premature to share here, but I'm happy to report that it is breaking into themes. It's so much better than having 50 random ideas instead to have 5 or 6 with some meat to it. And a couple ideas that are one-offs, they're not themes, but the one-offs might make a lot of sense for us to consider. So I'm excited about that work. Also, just recently with Dr. Che and Dr. Lopez met with both of our high school principals together, and really talked to them, asked them to reach out on their school sites to have more meetings with students. Both of them are already good at it, and they have principal advisories, they have different things. But I asked them to go cover some very specific topics with students. I know one has already started the outreach, the other will shortly, and I talked to both of our student board reps about that. But I think it's important that some of the topics get vetted, talked through on the school sites. That is really where it's happened everywhere I've been. As a high school principal, that's where I would have wanted it also, to have some of those conversations. I know both of our reps are doing a great job of helping organize those events. Chris, I just RSVP'd for your first meeting over there also. So happy to attend those, but really it's a good place for the schools to work things out there. We sent out something last week or two about creation of new courses, just as a reminder to everybody. Apologies to our board, you don't design new courses. You see them when they come to you from the school sites, and that is in December. So we had a reminder out to all the school sites that if they have a desire to create new courses, that those come in prior to December for your consideration, so that they're there for registration as we move forward. And I know both of our board reps are talking to instructional leads at their high schools, specifically in the humanities areas. And guys, correct me if I'm incorrect, if I'm wrong here, but I think that's what we talked about, that they're going to get back and talk to those guys, and especially social studies, history teachers. And I just skipped a step, so we're good. That's all I have for tonight. But again, great job, great start for these two.
Great, thank you. Okay, so next we're going to skip down to board operations. And Ms. Siegel, if you want to start us off.
I just have a brief statement I would like to make in response to some recent news articles. As Dr. Austin stated publicly, he apologized, we discussed and resolved it and have moved on, and our focus is on the work of the students, families, and educators in our district. So.
Thanks. Mr. Durrott.
Yeah, I've got something. I've been privileged for most of my life and my time on the board not to be the subject of overt racism. It's something that a lot of students in our district don't have the privilege of. That's why we talk about equity a lot. This weekend, there was a post on Facebook, and it was a post that was directed at me, and it said that I was a token placed on the board as a puppet of district leadership to advance an equity agenda, and a puppet that was there to display a facade of representation for the South Asian community, when in reality, it was, I'm a fake, essentially. And it was very troubling. And it's not so much troubling because I feel bad about it, which I do. You can't not. It's really troubling because that's the kind of vitriol that exists within our community under the guise of talking about substantive issues. And because we're the Board of Education, I do want to educate. for a minute. Some people may say, why is this racism? And first, the overt racism of it all is reducing my accomplishments or my thoughts and perspectives or actions down to my race, right? I'm only on the board because I look South Asian. That's overt racism. There's a host of other sort of implicit racism involved. There's like a racial essentialism. There's a model minority myth. There's tokenism. All of that basically is that it's a reduction. It's a reduction of my individual contributions to a stereotype, right? The idea that if I deviate from that stereotype, the stereotype that Asians or South Asians care about one thing or excel in one area, and if I deviate from that perspective, from that stereotype, then I'm not enough of a South Asian, right? I'm not good enough for that. That is also racism, pure and simple. And when I publicized this on Facebook, I didn't share the poster's name. I didn't share any identities. I publicized it, though, because you've got to call it out. And I have a bully pulpit that I can use, something that most people in this district don't have. So I called it out. And the responses I got were very telling. Of course, there were a few people who were incredibly supportive. There were also people who were sort of apologists for what had happened. There was a veneer of course that was terrible, what that poster said, but they edited their post, so it's okay now. The edited post, by the way, was almost the exact same post with the word token removed. I mean, talk about missing the forest for the trees, right? The sentiment was the same. And so then you had folks who tried explicitly or implicitly to silence me for calling it out. Folks who suggested that maybe I should have just contacted the poster individually, outside of the public, right? It's better that way. It's more respectful. Then the moderator of the group who contacted me and over the weekend tried time and again to get me to take the post down. And these are things that, I can deal with. I'm not telling you this because I want people to feel sorry for me, right? I wouldn't be a litigator and I wouldn't be in my second term on the PAUSD school board if I couldn't brush off, some weekend vitriol. But the point is that this happened in this community. The language that was used by parents. It was used by community members who are active in district issues. It was used by parents or community members who advocate for substantive positions in this district. And there is no way that kind of language gets used directed at me, but doesn't get used in the context of other students. And so, what would 14-year-old me think when, if he saw this kind of language or heard this kind of language? Because if parents are saying it on a Facebook group, which is for Palo Alto parents, they're saying it at home, their kids are picking it up, they're saying it at school events, people are hearing it. What would 14-year-old me have thought? 14-year-old me, and I can't speak for anybody else but myself, but I wouldn't have been angry. I might not even have been upset. I would have internalized it. I would have said, that's probably right. The things that I got, things that I did, it's probably because I looked Asian. It was probably the luck of the draw there. I would have felt certainly like I wasn't South Asian enough because I wasn't good at math, because I didn't share the same values or the same perspectives that I was supposed to share. And if 14-year-old me felt like that, I am certain that other 14-year-olds, other kids who will internalize this, who are in their formative years, other young adults who are supposed to be creating and fostering an environment of inclusiveness to support them as they leave our district, I am certain that they can internalize it too. And so, all I'm saying, my call to action here, is on that post on Facebook, not a lot of people liked that post. Not a lot of people liked that person's post. That's good. But not a lot of people called it out. Not a lot of people called it out. A lot of people looked at it, and a lot of people thought about how bad it was. But not a lot of people called it out. And again, if that can happen to me when I have a forum to publicize it, imagine how much it can happen to every single student in our district. Our district, which, by the way, is now a majority-minority district. Imagine how often that can happen. So my ask for you is to call it out when you see it, and also to observe. You might see this happen, and I've experienced this over the last couple of days, you might see that folks are going to try and minimize my experience. They'll say, how can you talk about racism when X? Or how can you call this out when Y? And just observe that, and again, recognize that it's one thing if it's happening to me, but if it's happening to me, it's almost certainly happening to our students outside of the public forums where people will talk to me that way. So, this is just an observation. I've been on the board for 5 years. I've never had the need to say something like this, and I hope I never do again. But the fact is that we've been talking about equity since day one, and it isn't because of some mysterious and unsubstantial agenda. It's because racism is real, it exists, and certainly if a board member can be the subject of a racist comment under the veneer of a math debate or some other substantive debate on issues, then it's going to happen to any of our students on any day of the week, in any of our classrooms, in anybody's home, and in any part of our city or district.
Okay, open forum. I know, I'm like, oh, yeah. Oh, sure, thank you.
I just wanted to say that we hear a lot about role models in this space. We hear about how the board should be role models and how the superintendent should be a role model for this community. But I don't think that's unique to the people at this table. I think that applies to all of the people in this community, all the parents, all of the adults. Everyone should be a role model for our students, for our kids. So what kind of example is being set to these students who hear about it, to the students who see it? If this happens to someone with a platform, to someone who can sit at this table and call it out to our community, what happens to the people in our community who don't have that ability, who don't have the ability to call it out, who don't have a platform? At the end of the day, there are members of our community who will be overtly racist. We can't do much about that. But we absolutely can change how we react to it. To sit back, regardless of whether or not you personally approve of it, regardless of whether or not you dislike it, to sit back is to let it happen again. We as a community need to be better. Policy aside, personal attacks, especially those that are overtly racist in nature, cannot be accepted. Thank you.
Okay, now open forum. We have 20 commenters, so that'll be 1 minute each. We will start with students, and as I've been ignoring whether they're on Zoom or in person, so I'm just going to go in order here. We're going to start with Fenton Zarlengo, and then I have an NA. If someone signed up to speak in person as NA, come on up next, and if not, after that is Ezra Furtado Torre.
Just start whenever?
Yes.
Hello,
Timer will start when you do. Sorry.
Hello, my name is Fenton Zarlingo, and I am a sophomore at Gunn. During my time at Gunn, I have taken classes outside of school to learn things I wouldn't be able to learn at Gunn. However, when talking to my counselor as well as other school authorities, I have learned that according to district policy, the only credits I am able to get from classes outside of school are general elective credits. One place where I have taken classes is the Stanford Online High School, which is accredited by WASC, as well as having high-level courses. Although this accreditation and rigor are not present in many other schools, it serves as a perfect example that there is no exception to PAUSD's policy. I'm not taking these classes to get into a college or because I don't like Gunn's curriculum. The classes I'm taking just aren't offered at Gunn. Unfortunately, because PAUSD does not accept specific elective credit for these classes, I end up having to take more classes at Gunn. I propose that outside of school classes be eligible for subject-specific elective credit, able to fulfill requirements such as the English or Social Studies elective credits for graduation. Electives in concept are designed to provide students with more possibility. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Lingo. I don't know if there's an NA. What? Okay. Ezra Furtado Tuari, Albert Lee, Ritra Nan. If you want to email the rest of your comments, if you run out of time and want to email the rest of your comments to board@pausd.org, we do read them all.
Hello. The district continues to make assumptions about its students with little to no backing. Teachers and counselors opposed to offering advanced math stated that only a handful of students would be interested in the class, that private college counselors would force students into advanced math, and that students only pursue math to better their college applications. At the moment, these claims are made without strong evidence, and yet they're important factors in the decision-making process. The board should strongly consider collecting and using more data when making conclusions about the student body. The last input that was taken from students was in March, and multiple conclusions could be made from this data that clearly showed that the district perception of the student body was incorrect. Contrary to district claims, almost no students successfully challenged courses. We don't even know what PAUSD's policies are for skipping by examination. Around 420 students are interested in taking math after BC Calculus, and most students are not tutored outside of class time. Why are we stereotyping our students? Students who speak at board meetings may be a self-selecting group, but the board should not use this as an excuse to ignore student needs. We need more student voice. Thank you.
Thank you. Albert, Aritra, and Sami Rahim.
Hi. I'd like to directly address Dr. Austin's recent statements as published in the Daily Post. In them, he states that a group of 30 people speak loudly and frequently, but don't represent most residents' views on issues like math. And I'm directly quoting from him here. There's a lot of people who do not think in the way this angry little group does. Dr. Austin's reductive and insulting rhetoric stands only to demean those who he disagrees with, to characterize the actions of many student advocates as driven by an angry little group, disparages the calm, rational, and well-substantiated efforts of those in opposition to his ends. Furthermore, these actions serve as a continuation of the district's continual trivialization of student voice. Lastly, it is not a valid claim to say some large, silent group of students exists in opposition to our aims. Though some have disparate opinions, stating these voices constitute a majority, or even a large group with no real evidence does not comprise a compelling statement. Thank you.
Thank you. Aritra, Sami, Vineet Pedler.
Okay. As the district recognized for academic opportunities, PAUSD students should not be limited to 4 math classes. In fact, we're not. We have AB Statistics and Applied Math as math electives. AB Calculus BC is meant to be the final checkpoint of the math curriculum, which it still can be. But multivariable calculus should also be one of our math electives. Apart from the common pathway of geometry to algebra 2 trig to analysis to calculus, students who enjoy learning math and have already proved a mastery of other math courses should be able to take multivariable calculus, just like students in AB Statistics or Applied Math. The system should have fluid laning so that students who aren't challenged enough or who feel too challenged should be able to move to the math class of their level. Instead of a common pathway that all students follow, the district should implement math classes in a way so that students should take the class that is fit for their level. Therefore, students who have math capabilities to take calculus in junior year should have an opportunity to take their math education to another level through MVC. We highly recommend PAUSD to take student input on this matter, as we believe that our suggestions will be valid. Okay.
Thank you. Sorry. Please send any more comments to board@pausd.org. Sami, Vineet, and Benjamin Vakil.
Hello. The number of students who would benefit from a higher math level is usually underrated. Even if the majority of students will end up taking calculus in 12th grade, the district must account for those who will take calculus in 11th grade. According to the superintendent's update last February, students taking geometry honors in 8th grade represent roughly 12% of the total PAUSD 8th graders. These 12% are now taking an Algebra 2 trigonometry course at Pali or Gunn. Almost all of these students will reach calculus by their junior year of high school and will have finished the 4-year math curriculum. These students should not have to end their math pathway in their junior year. Multivariable calculus will let them to continue their calculus journey until the end of high school, preparing them for calculus classes in college. And advancing the math program has already proved to work. Our neighboring district, the Mountain View Los Altos Union School District, offers foothill classes in their math pathway. Just like the MVLA school district does successfully, we ask PAUSD to offer a college-level multivariable class. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Vineet, then Benjamin, then Andrew Xu.
I would like to reiterate why we are speaking here today. We aren't here because our parents told us to be here. We aren't here because we want to impress college boards on the other side of the country. We are here because we enjoy math. Math is the ultimate base of this universe and everything that resides within it. It's the voice of nature, quietly revealing itself through the markings of a pen, the culmination of unification between logic, reasoning, and creativity, a canvas of intellect where ideas are sown. Math is a connection between philosophers held thousands of miles apart. It's a tie that binds cultures together, bridging time's vast sea. In turbulent ages when troubles abound, math offers solace, a comforting haven of quantification and certainty. Only in numbers may we truly discover ourselves and the world that surrounds us. As students, we wish for the ability to continue the studies of the subject we love. Multivariable calculus holds the key to the future. It is the basis for all the algorithms currently ruling this world. A modeling tool, it's invaluable to building artificial intelligence systems. We hope that the board will consider and embrace not only our arguments, but our passion for this subject. Thank you.
Thank you. Benjamin, Andrew, Fiona Shi.
I would like to thank Mr. Dopp for his comments. I definitely have experienced what you talked about. So tonight, I would like to talk a little bit about civility. No side of any debate gets to claim a monopoly over it. For quite a while now, I've trudged through the issues surrounding multivariable calculus, dual enrollment, and student voice, and all I can say is I'm appalled at the continued derision of all the rhetoric. One thing I would like to say is regarding Dr. Austin's comment in the Daily Post, which deeply hurt me. Well, with all the time and effort I have put in trying to make student voices heard, I can't help but think I'm part of that, quote, angry little group. But I am not angry. I have been nothing if not courteous throughout all of this. So remember, students matter. Last meeting, we were congratulated by the board for our gallant efforts, but since then, nothing. I care about what students have to say here. I frankly do not care what parents and other community members say online. Don't get me wrong, I unequivocally condemn the vitriol, but I care about what students have to say here at this podium. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrew, Fiona, and Wen.
Hi, board members have previously used the idea that schools are meant to serve all students as rationale for the lack of an effort to incorporate advanced math into PAUSD and the counter effort to remove opportunities. However, we believe that we can support students without additional means to pursue whichever math opportunities they want. Although not implemented anymore, PAUSD middle schools used to have a packet program in which students interested in accelerating will be given weekly self-study packets which would prepare them for skip tests at the end of the year. We believe that opportunities for those who cannot pursue them elsewhere, which would positively impact all students. We should encourage students to pursue the highest level of rigor that they are interested in, and for some students, this means discovering additional math opportunities. We believe that the board should look into ways to make skipping equitable rather than removing and obscuring opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that we now go to Zoom. That's all for students, right? Is there any other student that is signed up to speak for open forum? Great. Okay. Fiona, and then Wen, and then Stephen Davis.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I hope you can hear me very well. So today I want to talk about like the moldy spaghetti was provided to 6 public schools in PAUSD. And my son is a second grader of Fair Meadow. And after that day, I mean, he told me like the food was not fresh and he was hungry and upset and disappointed with the lunches that are provided by the PAUSD. And as parents, that addresses the concern. And for me, I would like, I stand for like the whole parents community of the PAUSD. So I would like to get more information about, hey, what's the like food source and also what's the process of providing or creating lunch for the students in the PAUSD area, and what's the budget for each meal. And also as a parent, I care. And also I want to know, hey, what's the progress of the PAUSD has been making based on this event, and what's the solution for?
Oh, I guess, yeah, when you're on Zoom, I don't have to remind you, sorry. You could send the rest of your comments to board@pausd.org. And I think that there's been communication about this issue in some weeklies and some superintendent updates on Fridays. Next, we have Wen on Zoom, then Stephen Davis, then Allison Rosen.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good evening. As a PAUSD parent, I'd like to share some thoughts on school lunch as well. Mr. Austin and the board, please imagine these are your own kids. Would you feed them bad spaghetti, moldy salad, expired raisins, chunky milk, bad yogurt? The things I just listed are all real incidents across school sites. The bad spaghetti on August 14th is not a one-time incident. A list of these incidents was sent to nutrition services in August, and we asked for clarifications on the process of preparing school lunch. Unfortunately, the only answer we got was food temperatures are taken daily. We all know temperature is not the only metric for food quality. If food ingredients are bad, even stored at the right temperature, they are bad. Since our questions were not answered by nutrition services, I'd like to ask a district to disclose a detailed process to prepare school lunch. Specifically, is there anyone checking quality of ingredients? Please do something. We are counting on you. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Stephen Davis, I think in person. Then we have Allison Rosen, and then we have Min Min Liu.
In just the last 2 board meetings, or assuming all goes as planned tonight, you will have signed off on $536,866 in special education settlements. These are a direct result of staff shortages, turnover, and poor training. PAUSD consolidated its Mod Severe special education program to allegedly provide more support to students. Unfortunately, I'm already hearing about incidents and problems with new teachers and aides at multiple schools. 3 out of 5 of the classified resignations reported tonight are from special educations. How many holes are there in our special education program? What are you going to do to address the issues, or are you just going to write more settlement checks?
Allison Rosen, Min Min, and Lizzie Lou Moeller.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Just very brief comment. My question is, if help is needed in an acute crisis, such as if a student is being attacked by another student, how does a teacher summon help, and what is the delay before help arrives? Under information items, there was a section on student behavior management. I couldn't find it on the agenda. What does it mean in the flow chart? If there's an injury, follows risk management procedures. I followed the link and it went nowhere.
Thank you. That is actually an agendized item tonight. It is, I think, in our info items. So we will come back to that. Min Min, Lizzie, Melissa Roth.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I joined the meeting to express my concern about the food issue recently. My 2 kids attend PAUSD. I think safety and health are always parents' priority. School districts should offer more ways to control the quality of the food. For example, teachers check the food before they distribute to students. And the food source should be made public. Where we get the food, what's the vendor? This information is available on the website. Thank you.
Thank you. Lizzie, then Melissa, and then Wen Jing-Shu. Is Lizzie there? There's no Lizzie. Okay, we'll hold on to her and come back. Melissa Roth.
Hello, my name's Melissa Roth, and I am the Director of Programs at PAC. At the August board meeting, PAC heard ELOP has a wait list due to staffing issues with providers. In response to this, PAC immediately hired additional educators and opened an additional 70 ELOP spaces across our kids' clubs. PAC has been supporting local working families with financial assistance through a variety of government and private funds, including administering the district's state child care subsidy program. Currently, 30% of PAC school age and 23% of our infant, toddler, and preschool enrollment are receiving a form of financial assistance. If you would like to learn more about PAC's increased commitment to children and families who qualify for government assistance, please contact Melissa Roth or Lee Fab. Thank you.
And thank you to PAC for doing that. Wen Zhang, Nicole Chuang, Stephanie Akers-Wright. Is Wen Zhang there? No. Okay, well, I'll try to come back to them. Nicole Chuang, and then Stephanie.
Good evening. I'm here as the co-president of the Chinese Parents Club in Palo Alto. I just wanted to extend an invitation to all new Chinese, Taiwanese, and Mandarin-speaking families in our district. We are having a welcome fair on Sunday from 1 to 4 at the Palo Alto Arts Center in the auditorium. There'll be various tables, including CAC, dream catchers, PTAC, and we're also really excited this year to have a presentation about Asian American history that was prepared by our very own students in the district. So I hope you'll all be able to stop by, meet some of the new families, and help us welcome them. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephanie Akers-Wright. Are you there?
Hello?
Yep.
Can you hear me? All right, I'm sorry. I'd like to address the district regarding the use of restraint on children with disabilities in Palo Alto schools. Twice this school year, I've witnessed a kindergartner with disabilities being restrained by classified staff in order to elicit compliance. I'm wondering how many of these undertrained staff are actually aware that this is an illegal practice. I'm wondering if they are aware that this is a dangerous tactic that must only be used in extreme safety situations. A child not being ready to enter a classroom is not a safety issue. Are they aware that there is no therapeutic or educational value to the use of restraint, that the use of physical force only exacerbates challenging behavior and does nothing to solve the problems that are causing the behavior? Where is the training for all staff in how to proactively collaborate with these children and avoid escalating them, traumatizing them, and creating dangerous school environments for them? How does restraint fit with the district's promise to our most vulnerable children? This gap in the quality of service to them is unacceptable. Teach your staff how to do better, PAUSD. Our kids need care and support, not fear-based compliance.
Thank you. Do we have either Lizzie or Wenjing on Zoom? No. Okay, so that's it? Allison Rosen spoke. Okay. Moving on to staff reports. We have our PAUSD promise. What? Oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Austin, you had a comment you wanted to make after.
Just a super quick one. I think people know this, but my comment during an hour-long interview about a group of people was no student ever. These are adults. They're adults that have been relentless, not all connected to math either. I think when you think someone's against you, you think every word that comes out of their mouth is about you. But I will share what I started to share earlier and just stopped. But the meetings that I talk to our principals about are with the same math students that are saying that they want to talk to people. I called in our principals specifically to talk about that topic, to ask them to go back and meet with the students where it belongs on their school sites, and to definitively figure out exactly what the request is, because even as I discussed with our two board reps earlier, the goalposts have moved so many times on this, I could not tell you with certainty, and neither could either principal or our ILs, if this is an issue about wanting a class for the love of math. We have options for that. We are going to present options for students to find out if it's about math. We're going to take care of that. If it's about weighted grade point average, that's a different conversation. If it's about what's on your transcript, that's a different conversation. At one point in time, it started with they did not want to only have a class offered through Zoom. Well, now it's offered multiple ways, including on campus, after hours, I understand that, asynchronously, on the Foothill campus. I need to find out exactly what it is, but our principals are going to help us do that so that they're going to come back with a concrete list, because every time we've solved a problem, there's been another one. And that is just a game that is not worth playing for anybody involved. Our students are going to be frustrated. We're going to be frustrated. Our school sites, which is where this should be happening, should be frustrated. So that's going to take place. And I could have said that more clearly in the beginning, but I didn't want to get in front of our principals, but now I am. So that meeting's already occurred. That's going to take place. And then just a super quick note on PAC. That is update worthy, and we will write about that as well. Thank you to PAC for stepping up and doing that. That's a big deal for our school district and very much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. My computer isn't responding now, but I know that the PAUSD promise is the next thing on the agenda. So I'm going to turn it over to you while I try to make that work.
I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Conway to bring up our guest and Barron Park principal.
Great, thank you, Dr. Austin. So to ensure a consistent implementation of our SWIFT plan and to keep the board and community abreast and informed and engaged about our equity-focused work, each board meeting will feature a brief update, equity-focused actions and outcomes at the site level. So tonight we feature Barron Park, and we welcome Principal Dr. Judy Argumedo, who's here to share some of the impactful work she is doing at her site as it relates to supporting and serving all students and families. Judy, you have the floor.
Good evening. I'm Dr. Judy Argumedo, principal of Barron Park Elementary, and I'm here to present a snapshot of the work the staff, families, and I are collaborating to improve equitable outcomes for all students. As an educator for over 30 years with a doctorate in educational equity, I like to consider myself pretty knowledgeable in that area. However, the work of equity is ongoing and we cannot be complacent. A new parent to my school recently told me that I needed to reach out more to the Latino community. It was hard to hear because I feel like I've done a lot of outreach, but I reflected and I started to look at where my gaps are. So today, this important presentation on equity will also be translated into Spanish so that it can be accessible to my families and I can show it at my upcoming principal's coffee. And I will also work on translating the presentation in Mandarin, which is a really large language, at my school. So I have my translator and I'm gonna let her introduce herself.
Good evening. My name is Fatima Lopez Sandoval and I'm a proud parent of a second grader, Arabella, at Barron Park. I live in the Buena Vista Mobile Home Park. I'm a program manager at Dreamcatchers and I just started as an instructional aide for Barron Park. I'm a PAUSD alumni. I attended Fletcher and Gunn High School. I'm a first-generation college graduate from San Jose State. I love PAUSD, and I'm thankful for all the board has done to allocate resources such as Rise Up, Focus on Success, and College Pathways, which have supported me in my pursuit of higher education. I hope to return to go back to school and get my counselor's credential to work at Pali or Gunn. I'm here to translate the presentation for the Latino community.
Ibram X. Kendi wrote once, well, she wrote recently, I hated school because it wore on me. I hated school because I loved to dream. The three initiatives that I will focus on, we have many more, but the three really represent how Barron Park and my staff, who's here to support me, my teachers, are really creating an environment where kids feel welcome, supported, included, can access the curriculum, experience enrichment of the arts and everything we have to offer in PAUSD, but most importantly, it's a place where they can dream. The three initiatives that I will focus on are the Social Justice Read Aloud School-Wide Plan, our Safe and Welcoming Climate and Student Support in Participation and Engagement.
Las iniciativas de equidad en Barron Park son el plan de lectura en voz alta de justicia social, clima escolar seguro y acogedor, apoyo estudiantil y participación y compromiso.
Our Social Justice Read Aloud plan, we're in our third year of implementation. The SWIFT goal that we decided to focus on was to increase educator and organizational capacity and accountability for equitable student outcomes through the development of culturally responsive, anti-racist mindset and implementation of culturally proficient practices. Language and words matter, and they can be powerful, they can inspire, but they can also destroy. So we have decided to take a preventative approach and use a dictionary that focuses on, and here it is, the Young Activist Dictionary of Social Justice. And we started off with the Read Aloud plan. I actually went to every school once a month and I did a read aloud. And those read alouds started with the definition of equity. And what Barron Park students, TK through 5th, are learning that equity is justice for and fair treatment of people, regardless of who they are or what group they belong to. And so after the read aloud from Ariel Johnson's list, I kind of like told my staff that we were going to do grade level social justice words. So each grade level got together, they picked 8 to 10 words, and they connected them to the social justice standards, and then they chose books from that list that they could read aloud. So as the students go through Barron Park, they have our common equity words, our common social justice words, and then they learn them from going from TK and K, we put them together, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th. And they get more complex as they go, but I'll just give you an example. One of the words I focus on besides equity was kindness. Sometimes, the kids need to know exactly how kindness is. And there's a lot of information, but last year I did give a pre-assessment, and kinders were pictures, or if they could tell me. In the beginning, they knew about 15% of the words, and at the end of the year, 15% knew what the words were, and at the end of the year, 70% of our students could tell me what all the words are, and it became part of our common vocabulary.
Plan de lectura en justicia social, incrementar la capacidad y la responsabilidad de los educadores y organizaciones para obtener resultados estudiantiles equitativos a través del desarrollo de una mentalidad culturalmente receptiva y antirracista y la implementación de prácticas culturalmente competentes. Línea del tiempo, la directora del primer año leyó un libro de la lista de Ariel Johnson una vez al mes en todas las clases. En el segundo año eligieron palabras de vocabulario y estándares de justicia social para enfocarse mensualmente. En el año 3 hubo una lista reflejada y refinada y a continuar una implementación. Los resultados son que la lista creada en el sitio de nuestro vocabulario común sobre equidad. La preevaluación fue el 15% de los estudiantes de kinder a quinto entendieron el vocabulario de toda la escuela. Después de la evaluación, 70% de los estudiantes de kinder a quinto mostraron comprensión del vocabulario de toda la escuela. Las conversaciones comunitarias planificadas.
Great, I did forget something. We do have community conversations planned for our 3rd year, so that should be coming up if you want to invite me back for an update. Our second initiative is safe and welcoming school climate and student support. And the SWIFT plan goal is to increase the percentage of staff, students, and families in each identified group who report positive school environment, equitable treatment, and perceive a caring staff. So my personal view on this is that everybody needed to have it be safe and welcoming at the staff too. The staff are the people I count on to do the academic, the social and emotional. They are there with the students. And so I really wanted our environment, which is a really big thing to me, to show that when you come to Barron Park, you care. We're surrounded by redwood trees, and we have a creek, and we are the most beautiful campus, in my opinion. And I wanted us to be beautiful inside. So we made sure that we expanded the gender-neutral bathrooms. Ann Brown had put them in 2017, but we moved them and we added a primary gender-neutral bathroom, and they don't actually kind of know it because it just says TK Kinder, and then the 1st through 5th is gender-neutral, and it's used quite frequently. We have a mother's room. We have a lot of mothers from the community and our staff who can go over there and take a moment and really have that privacy that they need. A wellness center since 2022. It's used quite often, and we talk a lot through the read-alouds because I want it all to be aligned about destigmatizing the effects. Students talk openly about anxiety, self-care, mental health. I'm pretty open. I have anxiety. I have my little fidget that I've been playing with because I'm a little nervous. And it's just something that we really have worked on to make our environment. And I have to say that our parents have stepped up. The PTA had the idea of a community closet. that it just started, it's gonna start tomorrow, and all families utilize the closet. So it really normalizes the reuse of items, and students aren't feeling like they're the only ones reusing items. We all do. The Halloween one is a big hit, so lots of costumes.
Clima escolar seguro y acogedor, apoyo estudiantil. Aumentar el porcentaje de personal, estudiantes y familias en cada grupo identificado que reportan un ambiente escolar positivo y un trato equitativo y percibir un personal atento. El comportamiento. Baños de género neutro desde el otoño del 2017. Se agregaron baños primarios de género neutro en el 2020. Habitación de madre creada en el 2022. Centro de bienestar creado en el 2022. Armario comunicativo del grupo de padres y maestros conocido como PTA. Las reflexiones, los estudiantes usan las instalaciones con facilidad y no es un problema, ahora es algo típico. El personal y los padres utilizan la habitación de madre con frecuencia. Estudiantes hablan abiertamente sobre la ansiedad, autosuicidio y salud mental, autocuidado y salud mental. Todas las familias utilizan el closet. Se ha normalizado la reusación de artículos.
Our third initiative that presenting is participation and engagement, and it really should be attendance, but I like to call it participation to make it a little bit more fun for the students. So the SWIFT goal is to improve Tier 1 universal, Tier 2 targeted, and Tier 3 intensive approaches to ensure a robust system to address academics, attendance, behavior, social emotional learning, and mental health. So one of the things that I started when I first got there was to lift parent voice through home visits. I think by the end of this year, I would have visited everybody. I'm catching all the ones I skipped. And we talk about a lot of different things. Not everybody can raise their hand at a meeting, at a staff meeting, or feel comfortable coming to the school. So I go to them. I do call them before. I don't just show up. And parents can always refuse. And they're really informing me of what the parent community wants so that they can participate, engage. So when they see Barron Park, it reflects what they want. Service through student leadership. We have a student leadership group, and I really want them to own Barron Park. I want them to build agency and advocate. They do all of our announcements. They run the student assemblies. They run our spirit days, our unity days. Our things don't look perfectly manicured because the students are doing them. It does lift a little off of my plate, but the students own it. They know that Barron Park is their home, and they have the agency and advocacy, and I hope one day they're sitting in your seats. And I think that's it.
Participación y comprensión. Mejorar los enfoques de nivel 1, universal, Dios dirigido y 3, intensivo, para garantizar un sistema sólido para abordar lo académico, la asistencia, el comportamiento, la educación socioemocional y la salud mental. Actividades. Hacer oír la voz de los padres mediante visitas domiciliarias, servicio a través del liderazgo estudiantil, reconocimiento del personal y de los estudiantes, eventos todo el año que promueven el aprendizaje sobre culturas en Barron Park. Los resultados y reflexiones son que 85% de las familias fueron visitadas, habían temas de bullying, salud mental y dislexia. Los estudiantes organizan y coordinan actividades, anuncios, días de espíritu, generar orgullo y apoyan a los equipos. Los alumnos reconocen el trabajo y esfuerzo de todos y muestran su agradecimiento. Actividades de mediodía, lectura en todos los idiomas y compartir en la clase. El impacto de las iniciativas.
We have another slide. I did forget to mention that when we do Builder B and we recognize and students get certificate, we also recognize the staff publicly, and that has been a really big hit with our students. Some of the students have asked that their parents get recognized because they're volunteers, so we're working on that. the impact of all these equity initiatives, you know, I want them to dream, but I want to make sure that we are having an impact. And with student surveys, we have positive feelings. We're working to get to 100%, but 63% of our students have positive feelings about their student competency and well-being and their social emotional skills. Challenging feelings, 62%, you know, how they can deal with them. We have the exact questions. It's a little hard to put into these slides. Emotional regulation, 35%. What I did find out that is really important is when students are taking this survey, they need to know the language. So we're using the language. We look at that survey, we use the language, and it says trusted adults. We have a bulletin with trusted adults, and it's all their faces, so that students understand what we're asking them and they can respond. Our outcomes, our environment, which is really important to me, 72% feel they have positive teacher-student relationships. 71% feel safe at school, and I really want those numbers to increase. We're going to be taking our surveys again in the next month. Our school climate is 65%, and a sense of belonging, 64%.
Impacto de equidad. 73% tuvieron sentimientos positivos, 62 emociones difíciles, 35% regulación de emociones, 72% tuvieron buenas relaciones entre los maestros y estudiantes. El 61% se sienten seguros en la escuela, 65% tienen clima escolar positivo, 64% se sienten incluidos.
And our last slide, which is the one I most feel proud of, is that our students and faculty and students feel about discussing race, ethnicity, and culture, so it's 81%. And I really believe that to provide an inclusive, anti-racist, welcoming, inclusive environment for school, students need to be able to talk about it. They need to know what the definitions mean. When their families and people are saying about equity and equitable work, they need to know what that means and how it looks like. They do provide for very challenging and difficult conversations in the class, and students can understand that things are not black and white, that there's complex problems. And I believe that when students understand the complexity, that they will be able to create equitable solutions.
El 81% de estudiantes y maestros sienten que pueden hablar sobre la cultura y raza.
That is the end of our presentation. Thank you so much for listening to us. And if you have any questions or comments, we would love to answer them.
Thank you. I have to say, when the BEOC decided to ask each school to present, I don't think our expectations were quite this high between Gunn and now you guys are setting the bar. But I think we hoped that it was a chance for the school to do some self-reflection, which clearly you all are doing anyway. But it's really wonderful to see all that's going on and the impact that it's having. So we have one comment in person. Jessica Clancy, you have 2 minutes.
Oh, hello. Hi, everybody. My name is Jessica Clancy, and I'm a teacher at Barron Park Elementary School. I also am on the equity leadership team, a part that Lana is helping run. And so thank you so much to Dr. John Austin, and thank you so much to the board members for listening and hearing Barron Park's input and honoring the SWIFT plan goals as a district. From the SWIFT model, you know, money, qualified staff, and other supports are provided based on need. So I just wanted to kind of give you an idea of the need and the numbers that Barron Park does have that makes us so unique and special. 61% of our students are a part of ESRI, the Every Student's Read initiative. 33% of our families are experience poverty. 31% of our students are still acquiring language, also known as English language learners. And so we just really wanted to appreciate all of that you're doing, and thank you for listening to us, and thank you for listening to our community.
Thank you. I think that's all. Yep, that's all the comments we have for here. So board members, Ms. Siegel.
I remember getting the Palo Alto Weekly. It might have been like a year and a half ago. It might have been 2 years ago. And there was an article about you, Judy Argumedo. And I cut out this article and I kept it. I was not on the board, but a parent in the district. And I thought, wow, I really hope I get to meet her. And then you were my liaison school last year. And so I met with you. And I just, well, first I wanted to read a couple quotes from that newspaper article. This was not because there was an equity report due. This is Ms. Argumento. I have never heard of this level of attention being paid in an individual family level in the absence, quite honestly, of kids who are struggling. It was fun. It was cool because I got to learn a little bit about her. The day after each visit, Argumento gives the child a card thanking them for letting her come to their home. I'm hoping that the kids see that I really care about them. I'm going to your home, and then the next day I'm meeting with you because I truly do care. And I still have that article because you were an inspiration to me then as a parent in the district. You are an inspiration to me now, and I just wanted to thank you for the amazing work that you are doing. You are truly a leader, and thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Darrow.
I just want to reaffirm the work you're doing and thank you. And I can't overstate how important it is.
Ms. Ledermark.
No, just thank you. You guys have a wonderful school. I did want to say hi to Fatima, if it's okay. My daughter works with Fatima as dream catcher. So.
Nothing. Okay. Student board reps, any comments, questions?
My brother just recently graduated from Barron Park, and I know that he and my parents were both, I think they're first a little shocked when they got that message from you asking to visit, just because that was so unprecedented to them, especially for us since we only moved to PAUSD a few years ago. But I know that they really appreciated it, and from the small amount of things that my brother will tell me about his school day, it does seem like he really enjoyed Barron Park. So just thank you for what you and your staff have been able to do.
Who's your brother? Oh, yes. Yes.
Anything? Okay. Thank you. I mean, I guess I started saying that. I am really curious to learn more about your wellness center at some point, obviously not now, but as we talk about wellness centers and expanding them into elementary schools, it sounds like you have one that's been going for a while, and I'd
More than welcome to come visit.
love to learn more about it. So thank you so much for your work. It is wonderful to see those SWIFT goals in action and making a difference. So I appreciate you both and all of you. Okay, thank you. I think next we have the CASP results.
Yeah, they're pretty good. All right, next item. Let's go. We're going to go with Mr. Moore, Ms. Penny, and Ms. Conaway. All will have a piece of our presentation on our CASP results.
Okay, we're going to start here with Ms. Penny, then I'll have a piece, and we'll end with Ms. Conaway here.
Good evening. This presentation aims to provide a brief overview of the 2023 Smarter Balanced ELA and Math Summative results. The complete 17-page report is available on PAUSD Board Doc website, and all CASP results will be released publicly in October. When reviewing these results over time, it is important to consider context. In 2020, all CASP requirements were waived by the U.S. Department of Education. In 2021, CASP was administered to students both remotely and in person. In 2022, in-person testing resumed, and last spring, PAUSD grade 11 students participated in record numbers, creating a new baseline for high school. In addition, when conducting comparisons over time, it's crucial to recognize that even if the student count remains consistent, the group's composition can vary significantly between years if student mobility is high. Key takeaways were observed based on the analysis of ELA and math overall, grade level and student group results, as well as grade level matched cohort results. ELA performance seems to be better or more stable than in math across multiple groups. Student performance varies for each grade level matched cohort group. Continued focus on IEP goals is necessary to support the academic process for students with disabilities. Tonight, we are highlighting results of a few grade level cohorts for 3 student groups: the SWIFT focus group, students with disabilities, and all others. 2023 student demographic data are used in matched cohort groups. It's important to note, over time, a small number of students changed demographic groups within their respective grade level cohort. For example, students moving in and out of socioeconomically disadvantaged status, entering or completing an IEP, or parental change to the race ethnicity designation. The pie chart represents that all grade level cohorts have similar proportions for the 3 student groups. For example, the SWIFT focus group is roughly 16 to 19% of students across each grade level. And Mr. Moore is going to talk us through DFS.
All right, I got the next slide here, and I'm not really a transition guy, but my team talked me into it, so here we go with some transitions on the slide. So we're going to talk about how the DFS, the distance from standard, compares to the standard way we normally look at these information around percent of students that have met or exceeded standard. So if we look at the normal bar chart with the green and the blue and yellow and red characters, the DFS score of 0 means that student has met standard. So anything above 0 is they're doing pretty well, and below there's still some work to do. The higher the number, obviously the higher the average score. And for our group in blue squares right now, the average score is 88 points above standard. What this also allows us to do is when we look at the same set of students, we can monitor the progress and see the progress within the bands itself. So for our blue square group, it's moved from 88 to 105 average, which we would not normally get to see if we're looking at only students that have met or exceeded standard as a percentage, because we won't see the actual absolute movement in there. Now, those lines that we're looking at on the numbers actually represent our 4th grade ELA scores. So this is the 4th grade students from last spring, and the 2022 numbers are their scores in 3rd grade. So that it actually shows some progress over time. And I would like to point out too that a horizontal line here represents 1 year's growth in roughly 1 year's time. So when we look at a positive trend line, that's really good for us. And our math for 4th grade looks the same. And then the next piece we'd like to talk about is our 5th grade. Our 5th grade, I think, is an exceptional group. It's shown progress in both ELA and math, and the trend lines are going positive. And I would like to point out too that as we look at these results, we all know that learning is not linear. So there are some years we are going to do better, and some years are going to be a little bit below the trend line. But in general, it's a positive move forward. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Ms. Conway.
Thank you. So beyond the traditional SBAC performance overview, we've zeroed in specifically on those 2 identified SWIFT groups that we identified in our original plan, which was Focus Group 1, which includes our students of color and our SED or socioeconomically disadvantaged students, and Focus Group 2, which is exclusively our students with disabilities. As a reminder, the goal was pretty straightforward: to close the distance from standard. And as you can see by the chart, we've seen some progress in that area, particularly at the elementary school level. So that green up arrow is indicating that we showed progress. But what you can't see from that arrow is that there are many groups under that category that were already above standard. We're glad to see the green. We want to point out that there's some additional growth that's within those numbers. And the best news of all between elementary and middle is that we don't see any red dots. So that is always a good sign for us. Our high school is a little bit different. So I want to really point out that this past testing year, was specific for high school students where we actually saw an increase in participation rates. Prior to that, we had very low participation rates. So the numbers you see here actually serve as our baseline, and that's not our way of shying away from what those numbers look like. But it is an opportunity for us to create a strong baseline so that we can measure, for the years coming up with a score that makes sense for us. So while you see a lot of red there, I anticipate that those red scores will shortly be showing green. So we do have a lot of work to do, and I don't want to, underscore the importance of making sure that we're actually increasing the performance of students with disabilities as well, because across the board, we see that there's some stagnant growth there. But we're just not looking at these SWIFT scores. What we are doing is continuing to implement a SWIFT plan that specifically identifies those two focus groups I just named. Namely, we are implementing our multi-tiered systems of support, which is our critical lever to make sure that students are getting early intervention. We're identifying those needs early, and we're putting some supports in place for those students. In addition to that, the other levels of our SWIFT plan include looking at our curriculum and our instruction to make sure that it's culturally responsive, making sure that we understand the intersectionality of those students with disabilities who may also be socioeconomically disadvantaged or in a minoritized group, which can doubly impact the performance of those particular students. So overall, if I had to sum this up, I will say that we're moving in the right direction. We still have some work to do, and I still strongly believe that the SWIFT plan we've outlined will get us there. And I also want to mention that our superintendent, Dr. Don Austin, has called all hands on deck around our special ed performance. He is holding us all accountable and responsible. So we, as a group, a collective group in Ed Services, will be supporting our directors of special education to make sure that we're paying specific attention to the performance of our students with disabilities.
And the last piece is what's up next. The state releases the scores for all districts. That's sometime in October, and that's as precise as information as we're getting right now. So sometime in October it'll be there to compare our scores against others in the state. And then the dashboard will be released for the state of California on December 15th. And that's all we have for tonight, so we're happy to answer any questions.
Well, thank you. And that report card is exactly why we asked you to make a SWIFT report card, so we can just see it's not always going to be all great news, right? We have a lot of work to do, so I appreciate it. And it's exactly what we hoped for. It's clear, it gives you a quick snapshot. We have a couple of public commenters, Stephen Davis, Akshaya Ardia, and Edith Cohen.
Thank you for highlighting the performance of students with disabilities, even if the results are a concern. While it is a fact that there is a gap isn't surprising, there should be two questions. Why is the gap between our general ed kids and special ed kids growing? And then two, what is the cause of the gap? The first question is the most disturbing and the one I hope the district and board take seriously. The gap between students with disabilities and their general education peers is growing by virtually every metric we have in the district, and in some cases quite substantially, like absenteeism. As to the cause of the gap, I would suggest the district take a look at students with disability performance in different educational settings and whether students are assessed based upon district criteria or purely via their IEP. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Akshaya, who I think is here, and then Edith Cohen.
Hi, this is Akshaya. I'm speaking on behalf of the CAC as the secretary of the CAC. Just like the report recommended, in order to focus on the IP goals to support the academic process for students with disabilities, all students with disabilities must be provided with access to the general education curriculum, GEC. Developing IEP goals aligned to California grade level Common Core standards will enable students to be involved in and make progress in the general ed curriculum. This will directly support students on state assessments based on state's academic content and achievement standards. One of the key strategies of the PAUSD promise says staff will develop IEP goals and accommodations that are standards-based. So we just wanted to highlight that. Thank you.
Thank you. Edith Cohen on Zoom.
Hello, everyone. Just a couple of comments. First, the English results that came out from the past are not consistent with what you declared 2 weeks ago. Basically, the L results for all students stayed flat. Also for many of the groups of interest, if you look over all grades, this is the first time we see the numbers for all grades. You claim there was a large improvement for third grade. It's possible that there were seemingly improvements for third grade, but that meant there were big declines on other grades. So it's a little bit dishonest to report that. Just focus on the one grade. I know it was in one of your indicators, but there was also another indicator to look at multiple grades, and that was omitted. Another thing that you didn't speak about is chart 19, which is the math results for 8th graders. It's the same cohort as the 7th grader, and we can see that these kids mostly did not improve. They were in an accelerated class that many of them were placed in it despite being years behind. And basically, their performance, even with respect to the standards line, stayed flat. So this is basically a big concern, and I'm urging you to revisit it, because the reimagining math program is the reimagining math program just failed. You can't put students that are completely unready, years behind, in accelerated math courses. It harms them. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Colleagues, questions and comments? Ms. Siegel.
Can someone who presented help me understand takeaway 3, just the way that it's worded, and then I might have a follow-up question based on.
Is it possible to get
Could you repeat that? I'm
sorry. I'll try to talk. So takeaway 3, I just wanted someone, maybe if you could explain it a little bit more, or I can just ask my question.
Can we pull that back up on the screen, please? Looking for takeaway number 3.
Wait, I think you're going.
Exactly.
Do you want to take it?
Okay, perfect. Continued focus on individualized educational plan goals is necessary to support the academic process for students with disabilities. So I guess my question is, my understanding is that our district, PAUSD, is one of the most inclusive school districts in the state, which is amazing. But it's trying to understand, I was trying to take notes during this. I'm of the belief that most of our students with disabilities spend most of their time in general education, which could mean that most students with disabilities actually use the standard curriculum, are mostly in gen ed, and get a regular report card. And only a small number of students is their academic progress measured through the IEP. So I'm wondering if maybe it would be helpful to disaggregate the data between these two types of students, as perhaps it's not an IEP problem, and it's not just the IEP goals, we also have students who are in special education with like a regular report card. That was my comment.
I'm not sure that we're going to have a response right now for that. And I can follow up with you afterwards. I want to make sure I clearly understand the question piece of it. And I think if we do that, we'll get you a better response that will be less off the top of our head, if that's okay. Is that all right?
Yeah, so it was just, the question is, could we consider disaggregating the data so that we can see these students where their IEP and their academic progress is measured by IEP goals versus that they're getting a regular report card?
Okay, I understand the question. I think our general number, I just saw this, about 1,200 students with IEPs.
Okay.
So I would have to look at the practicality of that.
Okay.
And then is it feasible? But I'll get back to you on that.
Okay, thank you. I just thought that could be helpful to understand the data.
But just to clarify, even kids who spend majority of the time in gen ed and are getting a report card, there are still IEP goals that we legally have to meet. And that's what you're interested in looking at, right? That's what this is about, to focus on those IEP goals that are part of that special education. Even if you get a report, even if you spend most of your time in gen ed and you get a report card, there's still IEP goals, and that's what we're talking about here.
I think of any group, the one that is probably it's not probably, it is the most challenging to generalize about is special education because of the breadth of what that even means. So yeah, we're going to have some work to do in this area. And when we talk about inclusive and least restrictive environment, you know, I always want to add the word appropriate. It's least restrictive, appropriate environment. And we have some work to do there to analyze and see as I go out to staff meetings. A lot of discussion on these topics. And this is the time for us to have these discussions. That's why we're all in on it.
Great. Okay. Is that okay, Mr. Dart?
I just had a question. When we get the CASP data and we get the dashboard, what can we expect to see in terms of sort of comparisons or additional information when we get those updates? Not the whole thing now, but just conceptually.
I think conceptually, one of the things is we won't see a significant or any participation penalty. What we don't know for sure though is, and one of the reasons we didn't do participation in this particular report is there's all kinds of business rules that go along with the dashboard. So we believe we're at or above participation rates, but we just need to confirm when the official one comes out. So it should look about the same of what these numbers that we presented tonight are.
And we'll be able to see in that presentation sort of comparison and all that good stuff.
Correct, with other districts and state and county.
Perfect.
So
thanks.
Ms. Latimer? Oh, okay. Mr. Goins? Whatever, you two work it out. Okay.
I can wait. Okay.
Got you at the timer out?
Yeah, maybe. First of all, thank you for this. I mean, as I think people know, I think this is really important. This is our report card, our report card as a district. So, this is, if our number one job is improving student achievement, then this is the measure, the gold standard measure that we have about how good a job that we did. So I think it's great that we spend time doing this cohort level analysis, which the vast majority of districts don't do, and the state doesn't provide for us. And so the fact that we did this, I think is really, it's good, because this is, I think, the best way I know to look at this. And I think, as most people realize, the reason we don't do this for third grade is because there is no cohort to track for third grade. Third grade is the first year we do this test. But we did it for the other grades, so I think that's great. Numbers in general are only relevant when they're compared to something. So here we did one of the two relevant comparisons. We compared our own students over time, which is great. The other relevant comparison is our students to students in other districts. In California, we're blessed with over 1,000 school districts, which is still mind-blowing to me. And when the state releases the data, we'll have access to the results of all their students and all their subgroups, and we'll be in a position to compare our subgroup performance to the performance of subgroups in other districts, which to me is equally as illuminating, and maybe in some ways more illuminating than this longitudinal analysis, because it tells us how good we're doing versus similar kids at other districts. So I hope when that data comes out that we'll have an opportunity to revisit this data and look at that kind of analysis as well as this. Just in terms of interpreting these graphs, sometimes this is hard to interpret. And by the way, using the DFS also great, because that's, I think, we all good? the scale score, I mean, the scale scores, which is what the DFS is derived from, is better than using meet and exceed, which has, you know, kind of methodological issues with it. So, you know, and DFS is just basically the scale score compared to the state standard for a given year and a given subject. So this is great, and so I think, again, we did it absolutely the right way. Lines that, on this DFS analysis, the lines that go up, I think that is really good. I don't think there's any question when the line goes up that it means kids are making more than a year's progress in a year's time, which is great. Though a lot depends on where they start, right? So if they're starting low, then the fact that they're going up is good. But if we did a better job earlier, they might not go up as fast. We now might be patting ourselves on the back so hard, but the kids would actually be doing better. So I think we both want to look at the slope of the line and where the line sits, even especially at the early points in the line. And so just for instance, I looked up a couple. So on 7th grade, if we look at the 7th grade math cohort for the SWIFT kids, I looked at low income as a proxy. And, you know, the line there is basically flat. That's not really the point. It's about at DFS, about at 0. DFS is about at 0, which in theory is good, right? It says on average, kids are at grade level. In fact, when you look up low income kids, 29% of the kids were at grade level. I mean, that's looking at 6th graders last year. So comparing that to about 0 on the graph. This is chart 17 if you're looking at it. And similar, well, I did another, but you guys get the point. So the fact that the DFS in some cases is above 0, which at first I was thinking, oh, okay, this is good. DFS is above 0. That means on average, our average scale score is above the grade level. It doesn't mean, it can still mean that there are a lot of kids, in our case, a majority of kids, who are below grade level, which has something, we got to go check the methodology on that because it seemed a little weird to me that the median, the DFS is a median, right?
Correct.
Yeah, that the median would be above the thing, but the percentage of kids above grade level would be below. Did you didn't look at that, did you?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the one thing to consider is that in looking at the SWIFT focus group, it does not include kids that are special ed.
Right, good point, good. And so that's important methodologically for everybody here to understand because we do it differently than literally anybody else. Different than the way the state reports it, which is we pull out, we do a subgroup of students with disabilities, which is the separately reported here. And all those kids, because we have access to kid-by-kid data, are not included in the SWIFT-focused kids, right?
Correct.
Right, so that's important. So, right, so good, so you busted me for methodological error, good for you. So when I looked at the SWIFT focus, I was comparing it to the state numbers, but the state numbers always include all students with disabilities in every subgroup, even though they separately report it. They then double count, as they double count a lot of things.
Correct.
So, okay, so that's interesting because it makes it hard to compare the two. But I do think, you know, even if we're at or above DFS, we still have, it still may mean that we have a lot of kids below grade level. And that, while below grade level isn't the be all and end all, I like the DFS measure better, it's not irrelevant. And I think getting all kids to grade level to me is one of the gold standard goals of the district. I mean, if we did that, you know, I'd go home early.
It's literally our job.
Yeah.
That's why
Nice to hear you say that, because I really agree. I mean, so, you know, I don't want to lose track of, it's nice that the lines go up, it's nice that they're above 0 on the DFS line. Those are definitely good things, and but we don't want to lose sight of, that still could mean that a bunch of kids, a lot of kids, are below grade level in a given thing. And we have to care about getting, our gold standard goal is to make that number 0, right? We want to make that number 0. Okay, so that's that. The one other point I wanted to make is looking at the last chart, 8th grade match cohort over time for math, which is, you know, we're going to come back to this and we'll be discussing our middle school math program. But this was one of the few charts that had downward sloping lines. which obviously if the upward sloping line is good, a downward sloping line is kids, I mean, let's just call it what it is, kids learning less than 1 year's material in 1 year's time, even though we're busting our hump to do that. And I don't think this reflects, my personal hypothesis is that it doesn't reflect deficiencies in our middle school program, though there may be things that we can improve there. My perception is that this reflects things that we can improve in our elementary program and kids hitting the wall in middle school. And I think you can see that in even when you look at other districts and around the state, you see the same phenomena as kids kind of, subgroups kind of doing okay, and then they get to middle school and they hit the wall. I think that's something to keep in mind because we're obviously going to be revisiting middle school math, but I don't think we want to, I think this is really important because like this is our report card and this is not a good grade. But I do think we want to be thoughtful about figuring out, what is this actually telling us about our performance and not just saying, okay, well, they went down between 6th and 8th grade. That's a problem for 6th to 8th grade to fix. Let's be thoughtful about identifying root causes. I did all the talking and didn't ask many questions. Do you guys have anything you want to comment on those comments? Wise policy, thank you.
Yeah, the only thing I would say to that, everything makes sense, is especially when we look at middle school math, because I'm hearing things nationally, I'm really going to be interested in the state trends. Not that it's going to make our results good, but I am going to be very interested to see what happens statewide.
Ms. Latimer.
Well, first, I just want to reiterate what Ms. DiBienza said about thank you for all the work you did on the formatting of this report. I know we went through a lot of iterations, but I think you landed on something that really works, particularly valuable. I think it's a longitudinal tool to compare. Are the greens, are we going in the right direction? So thank you for that. And I think it does give us a really clear picture of just a snapshot of where our strengths are and where we're heading in the right direction and where we aren't. And I also want to take a minute to say, just really express my gratitude to our high schools for how hard you work to increase participation of 11th graders for these assessments, because like Ms. Conaway said, we now have a baseline. And obviously, these high school results should not come as a surprise to anyone, given the performance of these students in these focus groups on assessments in elementary and middle school. I mean, we're looking at decades of the same results, so we should expect, it shouldn't come as a surprise that we're seeing what we're seeing in high school. But I think there's really something about having the stark numbers here now in front of us that hopefully makes the bright, blaring red alert alarm impossible to ignore. And I'm just really glad that we're finally willing as a district to see what's going on with the students in these focus groups as the crisis that it is, instead of minimizing it or ignoring it or kind of treating it with Band-Aids like we did for decades. So I'm really grateful for that. My 3 comments were high school, students with disabilities, and math. So we got math next week. You talked about students with disabilities, and I think we've made the point about high school. So thank you.
I just want to say one brief thing. I failed to thank the high school, the whole district, as well as the high school specifically on. If this is our report card, for literally as long as I can remember, we had an incomplete for 11th grade. I mean, I think everybody knows it drove me bananas.
It did.
And now we have a grade. We may not love the grade, but now we have a grade. So thank you to everybody who made that possible.
Student board reps, do you have any questions or comments?
Okay, so in a similar vein to Mr. Collins, I'm looking at chart 19, that's the 8th grade match cohort's performance over time in math. I noticed that the students with disabilities has fallen by what looks to be over 50 points since 2018, and the Swift cohort groups, or the Swift focus groups, looks to have fallen by 40 points or so. And then by comparison, looking at chart 18, which is the ELA performance for the same cohort, that's been growing like across the board. And I'm curious as to if there's a particular explanation for why there's been such a decline for that cohort particularly, because I think it's one of the only ones that's had such a decline compared to the others we've seen generally growing trends. And I guess B, why is there such a difference between ELA and math, given that one's growing pretty consistently and the other's falling pretty consistently?
Who wants to take that one?
Mr. Collins.
No. You're going to give Mr. Collins that answer?
Nobody else wants.
Go ahead, Mr. Collins.
I mean, the quick answer is there was this pandemic thing. And what people found out, and relevant to what Dr. Austin said earlier, is math is different from ELA in that it is taught, you learn, while you can learn ELA in various contexts, most people learn math only in school. And what we saw is significant, what's become called learning loss, was worse in math across all subgroups, but specifically, particularly among subgroups that were most dependent on school. And so I think our results are, as Dr. Austin implied, very similar to results across the state in the way that you just described.
I appreciate you noticing it, though. Anything else?
And we'll just continue on the COVID explanation. So like, and from 2019 to 2022, called that like COVID loss. Is it still COVID causing a drop like from 2022 to 2023? Still COVID?
Stay tuned.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to figure out, right? That's the work that staff has to do.
Having a whole meeting on it next month.
Okay, so I just have a few quick comments, and I know that we have a public comment that came in a little bit late, Fenton Zerlingo. So can we give him the mic for 2 minutes, and then late breaking public comment.
Hello, I'll be as quick as I can. I just wanted to give a quick comment.
Come on close, and you've got 2 minutes. Take all the time you want.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. I just wanted to give a quick comment. My brother used to go to PAUSD. He went to Ohlone Elementary School from K to 5th grade. From 3 through 5th grade, he had a horrible experience. He was alienated from his classmates. This was because he had an IEP. He was reading books from the late 1900s. And so we eventually pulled him out of PAUSD. He's now going to a school that is better able to teach him. It's not easy. It's not a public school. It's another commute. But we wanted to do something that was good for his learning. And just recently, I was in the library at Gunn, and I was doing homework, and I saw some kids come in with aids, and they then spent the next half hour or so taking out rags and cleaning the tables and the tops of bookshelves in the library, instead of receiving the education that they had come to Gunn to receive. Thank you.
Thank you. Most of the things that I wanted to say have been said. As I started, I really appreciate the report card format. It makes it very clear, right, what we have to work on. Ms. Vladimiric stated, and I think appropriately, I expect and I hope that the high school results were not a surprise to our high school instructors and principals, that the students who were not meeting standard, we had already identified them, right? The thing that would concern me is if we identified an issue in 11th grade, right? Like, hopefully we are on it by then and we are working towards it. So as much as I know that Mr. Collins is very excited that we are now assessing all 11th graders, I think that this is maybe just a sort of a confirmation that yes, this is exactly what we thought we were going to find. If it's not, then we should note that, and we should think about what other changes we should be making, because we don't do a standardized test from 8th grade to 11th grade. So if it is a surprise, I think that that's another conversation. But the other thing is the students with disabilities, yes, they are making a year's growth, and they obviously have to make more than a year's growth. I appreciate that you called out that, that goal 3 of really looking at, this is a very diverse group of students with very diverse needs. And it's interesting that they're all clumped together because probably different students need different things from us in order to really move them more than just a year's growth in a year's time. But I think really honing in on those IEP goals sounds to me like something that has a lot of promise. And I look forward to seeing what you all do next with it. I think that's it. Thank you. Anything else? Great. Okay. Let's do consent calendar now, which we've probably never done at 8:15. These items are considered routine and will be approved in one action without discussion. If there is a request to remove this item from the calendar, then we will speak to it. Do I have a motion? Oh, and let me just name that, sorry, We have a public comment for 5B, 5C, and 5H. Yes, I'm suggesting that we want to consider pulling them so that someone can speak to them. B, C, and H.
I move we approve the consent calendar with the exception of B, C, and H.
Second.
Student preferential board vote. Colleagues, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. So let's go back to our first action item will be 5B, certificated personnel items. Stephen Davis.
Make it a little easy for you, and 5B and 5C I'll do together.
Oh, great.
Try to be helpful. These are probably the two most important packages at these meetings. The most important thing that the PAUSD leadership does is the hiring and retention of staff. There is a problem with both of these reports. They provide lots of data and very little information. There is no data on churn rates or current vacancies or how we are doing this year versus last year. This is important both by school and, of course, by programs such as special education. These are important indicators to give the district itself, the board, and the public an indicator of the health and state of our school system for both classified and the classified and credentialed staff are what makes school happen. And without this information and without looking at this data, you guys have no idea what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a motion for items 5B and 5C?
So moved.
Second.
Student preferential board vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. 5H for action, Stephen Davis.
After you vote on this tonight, you will have allocated $536,866 to settlements for special education so far this year in 2 meetings. This doesn't include the legal costs that the district incurred, and I'm not sure if it includes the legal costs for the parents when the district loses. When the district makes an initial settlement with a family, it often doesn't just last 1 year. It could continue for an entire child's entire primary and secondary education. A single failure by the district could easily cost this district over $1 million. The nickel and diming of the special education program is penny wise and pound foolish.
Thank you. Do I have a motion on 5H?
So moved.
Second.
Students? Colleagues?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to, oh my goodness. Wait, I'm going to use this because this is not working.
You should have 6A.
Lease back. Yeah, there were 3. We did B and C together. So we're on our one action item.
Mr. Holm.
Great.
Good evening. Thank you. So tonight we have it's both a resolution supporting the award of lease-leaseback agreements and the selection of XL Corporation as the lease-leaseback entity, which includes the full contract. And so as a refresher, we did a lease-leaseback call for proposals and interviewed and chose XL as our preferred contractor and have been working on negotiating the contract with them. This first approval tonight is the base contract, and it includes 1 GMP, a guaranteed maximum price, which is the pre-construction services, and a procurement of the electrical switchgear, which is a very long lead time item. We ultimately will bring this contract back to you 2 or 3 more times once when we get CEQA completed, and we will have after CEQA some more long lead time or early procurement items because to take advantage of the both fast track and the prefabricated components of the project. And then we are still working, or part of the pre-construction work will be working with XL to determine how the rest of the phasing will go of the project with either site work or buildings altogether or separated and whatnot. But those will come back as separate GMPs, guaranteed maximum prices, as part of the contract. So this will not be the last time you see the contract, but this is the first time for this.
And thank you for the email with the long explanation of
Yes.
Exactly. Do we have any questions from anyone about this item?
I move the item as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? Student board reps, preferential board vote. Colleagues, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Holm. Okay, moving on to our first discussion item. It's a public hearing. I get to gavel again. I know, I really love to gavel. Let me see if there's any public comments. There are, yeah, this is, so I'm going to open the public hearing on sufficiency of instructional materials, Resolution 2023-24.04. There are no public comments, so I'm going to close the public hearing. Colleagues, do you have any questions or comments about this item? Okay. Moving right along, we are moving on to ethnic studies.
I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Lopez, but I do want to just make sure we're all on the same page. It's the importance of writing the good recommendation. We are asking you one question tonight, and that question requires no action. It requires a discussion of any length that you choose, so that when this item goes to BPRC, they are going in hearing each of your viewpoints. And the only question we are asking, and we can talk about other things, but the question is, would you like to start the graduation requirement of ethnic studies in 2030? That is required by law to be in place by that point. 2029, which is this year, just for context, 2030 is this year's sixth graders. 2029 is this year's seventh graders. Or would you like 2028, which is this year's eighth graders? That is the essential question, but Dr. Lopez is going to take you through this piece.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Austin. So just a little bit of background. I know Dr. Austin just kind of shared a brief overview as to what we're going to be talking about, but Assembly Bill 101 is an existing law that requires students in grades 9 through 12 to complete an ethnic studies course by the time they graduate in order to earn the diploma by the school year of 2025-2026. So currently, and our district has been offering ethnic studies one semester course for several years now. And what our district did, or what we did, I should say, is that we assembled a team of social science teachers, instructional leads, district administrators, in order to review our existing course and enhance it in order to make it applicable to be able to meet the requirement for students to, for it to be a graduation requirement. Oops, let me back up. So here you have some of the meetings that we initially started meeting back in January 23, and we started reviewing our current course and to identify some of the items that will need to be adjusted, again, based on some of the requirements. Other items that we did, for example, we discussed the scope and sequence of the curriculum, kind of where it's going to land. We also discussed the potential grade that where it was going to begin, whether first 9, 10, 11, or 12. And, also our last meeting in June 28, we identified the potential units that we're looking into adding into or enhancing into our program, or our course, I should say. Upcoming meetings. So actually today we held our meeting with our ethnic studies group, and it was very, we debriefed, we talked about next steps, but we also, discussed some potential next steps also to move forward, and maybe some additional items to discuss. So the next item that we have, the next step will be also to, provide this at our next board policy review committee meeting to recommend the implementation of the timeline, which that's actually going to be on September 22nd. And then after that, it will be a board policy approval, which will be for October 10th. But we're also, we're looking into adding 3 different dates where we are able to get community and student input regarding the courses as to what we have, and maybe seek some input, but also maybe make some adjustments as needed based on the feedback from community and students. And then last but not least, to bring it back on December 12th for our board meeting to inform an implementation plan. So with that being said, we're here, as Dr. Austin mentioned, seeking guidance as to, when are we going to be able to schedule this course for, as mentioned earlier. Option A would be to add this as, for our first class will be when it's due in class of 2030 for our existing 6th grade students. Option B will be for class of 2029, our 7th grade students. or option C will be for our class of 2028, which is our existing 8th grade students. So this is what we need your guidance and as to how to move forward. And recommendations. So based on the feedback that we received today from our committee, and again, for us to be able to get student input and community input, we feel that it will probably be more comfortable for us to go with option B if possible, to allow us, give us more time to seek input. We also want to get input not only from high school students, but also get input from middle school students, who is actually the students that are going to be impacted in a positive way, right? So we want to make sure that we incorporate and provide their input into our courses. That's why I think with our committee, we felt more comfortable with option B as to initiate in 2029 or 2025, 26 for 2029, excuse me.
Right. Okay, thank you. We have 3 public comments. Susan Steiner-Saul, Nicole Chi Wong, and Sarah Woodham. And Susan is on Zoom. Do you have her there? Great.
Can you see me?
We can hear you.
Great. My name is Susan Saul. Our family is new to PAUSD this year. I have a daughter who's a freshman at Pali. One of the most compelling things about living in Palo Alto is the proximity to so many different ethnicities, cultures, and religions to be understood and celebrated. Ethnic studies is a wonderful opportunity for our students to learn about the rich heritage of the diversity represented through PAUSD. This is a gift to our children. As a member of our Jewish community, our values implore us to learn about and ally with other minority groups, which we have a long history of doing. You may be surprised to learn that 30% of Bay Area Jews actually identify as people of color. In our synagogue right here in Palo Alto, we have Black, Chinese, and Korean American Jews, and many more. We're a people from every corner of the globe, unified by a set of values and beliefs, and our identities are often intersectional. I'm pleased to see Palo Alto Unified working with JCRC, the Jewish Community Relations Council, as a partner as you navigate the implementation of AB 101. JCRC is able to share high-quality resources and provide curricular expertise and feedback on ethnic studies, lesson plans, and course materials. I support commencing our work without delay on fulfilling the requirements of AB 101 and creating the best possible course for understanding and celebrating the rich diversity of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Nicole Chi Wong, Sarah Woodham.
Hello again. I'm so excited that we're starting to talk about ethnic studies in high school. When I took AP US History at a California public high school, I was so angered by the one paragraph at the end of every chapter that tried to cram in the achievements, contributions, or experiences of women or people of color. In fact, I even wrote a college application about that frustration and how it made me feel about myself. Taking women's studies and ethnic studies courses in college was the most empowering experience. I learned about a history that helped me better understand the context behind my life experiences and my intersectional identity. I understand that there's a lot of concern about what is included in ethnic studies, and I agree that hard conversations need to be had. That's part of the benefit of ethnic studies. While our students clearly will benefit from learning a more representative history, our community will benefit from having these hard conversations. To slow down the implementation of ethnic studies for fear of making people uncomfortable is missing an opportunity for growth. Some may say, what's the harm in waiting? And every year that we wait, we're depriving our students of the opportunity to better understand the world they live in, their own intersectional identities, and the history that came before them. Requiring ethnic studies for all our high school students is an important step to addressing racism in our schools. If only we could require ethnic studies for our entire community. So please, let's not delay, and instead let's actually embrace the bigger opportunity here to include all historically marginalized, disenfranchised, and persecuted groups in ethnic studies. I know a quicker timeline and a more inclusive focus makes your job harder, but I know that if any team is up for that challenge, it's this one. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah Woodham.
Front age.
Okay, so for many of us, parents of color, the burden of inoculating and keeping our 14-year-olds from internalizing inferiority and gaslighting themselves for life is in effect us curating ethnic studies ourselves for our kids. And I have a 14-year-old right now. I don't want to get more personal here. Getting personal a little bit, I was really moved by your remarks, Janak, because it brought back the memory of even a parent here in this district who, when my kid was applying to college, straight-faced sort of told me, yep, your kid's gonna get into college easier because of affirmative action. This came, a generation later than when I was in college, and someone looked at me totally straight-faced and said, I'm not Black, talking to me. And I realized later that I didn't fit the mental model of what Black people do, what they say, and how they carry themselves through the world. So it perpetuates through generations. So this needs to be a priority for our district, because we don't have an understanding as a community, as a world of diverse people coming from all different places, of how we got here, how the systems were created to so that we're in different buckets, and it's really hard to get out of those buckets. So please keep this momentum going for introducing ethnic studies, mandatory, sooner rather than later. So what Nikki said. And this rollout also gives us a model for, as we said, messy conversations, but hopefully it'll be a template for having those conversations earlier, more often, in a great appropriate way throughout our entire district.
Thank you. Okay. Colleagues, comments, questions, thoughts on timeline? Sure.
So there are 3 meetings left, but the recommendation as of today is to do option B. That is the committee's recommendation as of today.
So just to clarify,
Yeah,
so
okay.
we have, in order for us to be able to, we feel more comfortable getting input from the community, but also from students. So that's kind of what, that is our expectation as far as moving forward to what the work that we've done. But we actually do have another planned meeting, but again, a lot of it is based on where we land today, because in addition to, we want to make it as low stakes as possible for our teachers too, because we also have to begin planning and training our teachers in social science that are going to be taking that on. So we do have one more meeting scheduled, but also in that meeting, we want to incorporate and we want to get input from our reading specialists, our English EL specialists, but also specialists or ed services specialists too, to be able to provide feedback as to the units that we're using, make sure that they're sound and they're going to be applicable for all of our students to make sure that we meet their needs. So that's what we want to make sure that we,
Got it. That makes
we want to go slow, go fast, but also we want to make sure that the class is going to be, number one, applicable. We want to be able to include all of our students, but we want to make sure that they're all going to be successful in it as well.
Thank you.
Mr. DeHaro.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about this earlier as well. We were talking about what, I certainly don't want to wait until the third option. In my heart, I want to do the first option. What do we lose by doing the first option in terms of the feedback and in terms of, I think you said or suggested sort of getting it right? What is it that, what specifically is it that we are looking for to wait another year to implement?
So feedback, community student feedback, but also being able to provide that time for our staff to be properly trained and be aligned, because there's going to be some adjustments that we're going to need to implement in our sequence for social sciences, because we currently have, our district requires 4 years of social science, and NX studies we're looking into adding it in freshman year. So that's going to disrupt a little bit of the system that's been in place for a long time, especially with the electives at the senior year. So that's why we want to make sure that we get that right to minimize the impact on for our students.
I want to hear what my colleagues have to say before I.
Ms. Latimer.
So I was thinking about it like this. Dr. Austin said earlier that proposals from sites for new courses are due in December. So those proposals are going to come in, and those classes are going to be offered in August when school starts. Is that right? So what you're telling us is you would like an extra year, basically, from that. That's our typical timeline for adding new courses. So you guys need to, and I would just say my perspective as a board member is yes, would like this to happen as soon as possible, but I don't feel that it's my job to second guess what the experts are telling us they need to do this well. So I'm glad you're not asking for C, because then I might have to get out of what I think my lane is and tell you, I don't think you need 2.5 years to do this. But I share my colleagues' desire to make this go as fast as possible, but I hear you that, and I think it's important to we do have this class already, but it is important to recognize that it's an elective that we haven't even always been able to fill. And that's a big jump from something that's required of all students. That's a lot more teachers that presumably are gonna have to teach it. And like you said, be comfortable teaching it, because listening to some of the commenters, the only thing worse than not talking about stuff is talking about stuff in a way that does more damage than being silent. And so I think that this district doesn't have a great track record of talking about things in a way that doesn't do damage. So I would like to take the time and make sure we do it safely.
No. Okay. Student board reps, comments?
I mean, just a quick comment. I think if we do it, we ought to do it right the first time. If we do implement it, try and rush, do it too fast, and it goes badly, I think there's a lot of potential to cause damage to the reputation of the entire course as a whole, especially when it is, in some cases, a controversial course. I think if and when we do implement it, we ought to prevent, try and get ahead of any issues that might crop up. And I think the best way to do it is make sure that we don't mess up the first time around. So I would, yeah.
I have two questions. First is along similar lines to Mr. Drop's question, but focus more on students. I've heard at the site level and from your presentation, I know that you mentioned that you want to involve students in at least helping to shape this curriculum. So what specifically would students be able to do? Like what kind of contributions would they make? And then how would their level of contribution differ between the first two options?
So the contribution that we're looking into getting, number one, is to, as we kind of go into the weeds, when we begin to go over as to where we are with the overview, is to look at the units, if any of the units that, and some of the content that's in there, because we want it to be, again, we're focusing to be very inclusive, a representation of our other different cultures that serve in our community, but also to kind of touch some of the items that were discussed before. I mentioned that we want to get input from our middle school, because we really want to look into starting from 6th grade all the way up to high school. So we're working on articulation from middle school to high school as well, because I know at middle schools we offer the curriculum stomp, and we want to make sure that that's maybe another curriculum that we need to review and make some adjustments to align to what we're doing. So that's what we're seeking. That's where the student input and feedback will be instrumental for us to do this moving forward.
And how would that level of input from students change between the first two options?
I mean, at the end of the day, it's going to be we're seeking their input, so it will be we're making a recommendation, but it's going to be really our board's decision to do that.
Just a quick thought on that. We think no matter what you tell us as far as the start date, that we're going to bring a course forward in December of this year for approval. Next year, that course, while it could be what we think is going to be the required course of the future, will still be the elective. And I think you're going to get a couple bites at the apple on this one if we go with this timeline. You know, we might get in there and have some revision time, both from students who are in that class, and we continue to look at it, and we think, oh, gosh, you know, we missed on whatever. The stakes would be lower if we have one more shot, but we're still pushing to have the course approved in December of this year. I think maybe we didn't make that clear enough. That's my mistake.
So you guys are saying, so we have an ethnic studies course now, but you're saying you're going to push to have the revised course
Yeah, I think what's
ready
really,
for August.
what's really important for everyone to hear is the controversy is around some elements of the model curriculum. We're not adopting that. So we need to be super clear about that. We are taking our existing course, we're modifying, beefing it up, but we're also going out to specifically speak with groups that have found exception to pieces of the model curriculum, and we've learned from some other people that, quite honestly, you know, may regret to a degree going so fast to get it in place. So it's going to give us a little more space, but we still plan to bring the course to you in December.
And one more question I had was, have there been any focus groups or feedback from students who have just taken the elective ethnic studies course so far? And if so, has that been used in shaping this revised curriculum?
Good question, and not yet. And that is where we actually had a conversation today during our meeting about our plans on to getting student feedback from during Prime or I know, yeah, so there's more to come.
Anecdotally, we've heard a lot of really good feedback about that class. But of course, that's not a full survey of the class, but it is really, students often say it is different than any other class that they have taken in our district. So I'm excited to hear feedback from them as well. You answered my biggest question that, like, is it possible to sort of pilot it next year? To really, and I wasn't sure that you thought you could have sort of a draft of it ready to go by December, but if you can, I think that's great. It kind of feels like that's about as fast as we can go. I mean, if you all have it designed in December and you want to make it mandatory in the spring, I don't know that anyone would stop you. But it seems like if you can have time to get that input from students currently taking a class, from our community members and our students, like you said, 6 through 12, which I love, and drafting it and piloting it and trying it out and seeing which are the really hard conversations and which are the things that really move our district and impact our students, so that it is ready for full implementation for option B. I think that probably makes the most sense. But I'd say we would be open to hearing an adjustment to the timeline if you suddenly decide you're ready to go sooner. Anyone else? Great. Okay, thank you. Great. We are on to information items. These are items that do not have a staff report, but are just included for our board and our community to see and have an update as to what's going on. We have several comments on 8A, the student behavior support. So why don't we call on them? Stephen Davis, Akshaya Ardaya, and Rika Yamamoto.
It's unfortunate that there is an actual presentation being made. This document is not a plan, it is not a program. Where is the data that is to be? It's just a flow chart. PAs do trying to improve behavior project. Our work on SWIFT, there are there's a plan, there's a program together. The only data, and it is not included here, is the essential disproportionality for Hispanic students with disabilities, socioeconomically disadvantaged students. We have no data on incidents and apparently no plan to. If you're going to take your seriously, then it's time to start seriously.
Akshaya, Rika.
Hello, everyone. I'm Chair. I'm here to just represent myself as a parent and note some of the recent observations. I don't prepared, but yeah, this is a topic to me. So first of all, I wanted, what Stephen Davis said, I didn't actually understand more about this approach. So I just noticed that the aid training is lacking. I mean, it is to what Stephanie said earlier. Restraint, we saw that happen, multiple parents saw that happen. And then the ed specialists are being shared among 2 different schools, and sometimes they're only there to train the aides 1 or 2 days out of 5 days a week. So the aides don't know or may not know or who to approach, right? So I don't really know what the behavioral intervention coaches do. I know the intent is right. I'm pretty sure about that. But if a student is exhibiting extremely different behavior at school than after school or camps or activities and everywhere else, there is something that's happening here. And regarding the reports that's mentioned on the documentation, there has been inconsistency with respect to the antecedent, the behavior, and the consequence. I think the incident reports capture the behavior and the consequence, but we need to know the antecedent. And there's generally more work that needs to be done to gain trust between the parents and the teachers and the aides. And I think everybody wants to do right by the students. I do have that faith in the system. It's just the aid training. Thank you.
Thank you. Rika Yamamoto.
Good evening, everyone. CAC welcomes and appreciate the robust student behavior support. I think I was going to watch the presentation, but to that, CAC would like to emphasize the inclusion of a behavior support for the student with a disability. Behavior is one of the special factors that must be considered when developing an individual education program for the student with a disability. The IEP team must consider the use of positive behavior intervention and support. The Individual Disability Education Act makes it very clear the student with a disability must receive their education alongside the student with a disability. With proper supplemental aid and services, we can maximize the inclusion. For California Special Ed provision, supplemental aid and service actually include behavioral support. Please join us for further discussion. CAC General Meeting will be on Friday, September 15, 12 to 1:30 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you. We have one more comment. Stephanie Akers-Wright on Zoom.
Hello?
Go ahead.
You guys hear me? Yep. Hi there. So, yeah, I wanted to express the same concern about the aid training because most of the time our children with disabilities are assigned an aide, and it's a classified employee. It's probably the least education requirement of any employee in the district. And I'm really questioning how much these aides really understand our children's categorical disabilities, the presentations, and the behavior. Behavior is communication, and our kids have very different ways of saying that they are in need or that their needs are not being met and that they're not being understood. And when they're being overcorrected by people who don't understand what their behavior is telling them, they risk feeling as if there's something wrong with them. That's not inclusion. We're supposed to be modeling for them the behavior we want to see. They will follow our examples, not just punishing them and holding them to unrealistic standards. I also would like to express my concerns about functional behavioral analysis and hypothesizing about what a kid's behavior is really signaling by people who may not understand that child and their specific presentation within their categorical disability, within whatever it is that they have going on. Are they even aware of what they have going on? A lot of things are confidential, but we need to be more clear about behavior is communication, and we need to respond with care and compassion, and not everything is about compliance, and not everything is about academics. Relationships are also important to behavior. When kids trust their caregivers, they're more likely to exhibit positive behavior, not challenging behavior. So the lenses that these people are wearing when they view our kids' behaviors matters. I would like to have more education about these kids and their disabilities and how they experience the world, because it means a difference in what you're seeing, whether something is just behavior or is it really communication. I will full-heartedly say it's communication.
Thank you very much. You can send any other comments to board@pausd.org. Okay, colleagues, do any of you have any comments or questions about this item?
This is on the second attachment, the consistent practices in tracking student behavior. And so, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to scroll down. Okay. It says documentation on IC, which is Infinite Campus, is up to staff discretion. And I was hoping someone could define staff, was my first question.
Who decides if it goes into Infinite Campus or not?
Well, yeah, is staff teachers? Is staff principals? Who is staff?
Yeah, I can take part of this.
Okay.
So I'm trying to get my words right in my head, but I understand that there's strong feelings around these topics, right? These are super important. That's why we had so many people come and speak to us in May or June from our staff. But I have a hard time in some way hearing that our classified staff are somehow unprepared or not in a position to be able to fulfill these spots. That is so different than what I see. And Ms. Siegel, this has nothing to do with your comment. No, I'm sorry, this isn't about that. About the public comment, I think we've got to be really careful there. I don't think there's anybody who knows the student as well, besides a parent, as a one-to-one aide or behavior coaches that are in there. I just think I have a hard time hearing that, and it just doesn't line up with what I see in classrooms. As far as staff, those are full-time employees. They can be teachers, principals. Classified employees will have limited opportunities to enter directly into IC as a rule, but those are permanent positions. Now, I will tell you, when we look at the data on this, and we have already looked at some preliminary data, let's just back up in time here. We just trained every single staff member in the entire district in very specific areas of behavior supports. And what we think we are seeing is very much like this district experienced in Title IX. And what I mean by that is Title IX was not well documented here for a long time. And then when the training came in, it was not only well documented, it might be overstated, over documented, where everything started going in regardless of age appropriate behavior. So some schools say we are not calibrated right now. It's a long way of saying we're not calibrated, and some schools are reporting things differently than others. That was totally expected. So this is that time now when we go back and calibrate. So I hope that helped get to your question.
Yes. Do all teachers have access to their students, their own students on ICs, like starting this year? Is my second question.
Yes, they have access to things that weren't on IC in the past. These are significant changes in practice and policy in the district. So now behavior plans are all on IC, so are the IEPs. Those go hand in hand right now, which is something that we're discussing also. Why does a student have to have an IEP to have a behavior plan? That doesn't make sense. But right now, that's the reality.
Okay.
So the behavior plans and IEPs are all online.
Okay, and then my last question is, can substitute teachers, do they have access to this on Infinite Campus when they go into a classroom?
No, not necessarily. What we've said is if we have a long-term substitute assignment, we would treat that person differently. But the level of confidentiality is huge. Okay. And the students with the most extreme behaviors have one-to-one aides who also know of the situation. We've asked teachers to be very careful about sharing of all the confidential information. If there are things in the behavior plan that somebody taking your class over should know, we're asking the teacher to include that even with their sub-plans.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I'm just going to jump in here because if anyone who's listening or watching and isn't sure, like, well, why would we have not had that on Infinite Campus the whole time? There are strict confidentiality laws and we take them very seriously. And I think there's always that balance between how far do you share this information to make sure that everyone who might ever need to know it versus just broadcasting it publicly, and now everyone knows every child's personal information. So it's always a balance, and it looks like we are now tilting more towards being a bit more transparent with these reports, but still maintaining the confidentiality we have to. Did you? Okay, go. Sure, yeah. Okay, what order are we on?
Just to clarify something you just said, Dr. Austin, I think you're going to agree with this. I think two things can be true. It may be that you saw the way you generally see, and I certainly think this is my experience too, when you see aides with students and special needs students in classrooms, that they do a good job, that they're well trained, they work with the students very well. My own son, as you know, was a student who had a one-on-one aide most of the time. He was in PAUSD, including the redoubtable Meb Steiner, and we still really appreciate that. And it can also be true that because we rely so heavily on aides in our district and have so many, and it's a turnover position, that there could be aides, that there probably are aides, that are not as highly trained as we would like them to be, that may not always do all the things that carry out the very best intentions and practices that we aspire to every day. Is that, so I didn't want to say that you,
I think that's perfectly fair.
I'm just adding to what you said as opposed to disagreeing.
And I do think that a description, somehow getting you all information about our onboarding process is important, because sometimes I hear it reported back the way it used to be, and it's different now. So I'd like to do that, but certainly there are different levels of support.
And I do think, I mean, this is a topic for another day, but there are always open positions for aides. Right? How many open positions for aides right now? Ballpark.
I think we're around 16 open positions.
Yeah.
And to add to Dr. Austin's comments on onboarding, we've spent a lot of time over this past year addressing some of the same concerns that many of us have had about when we hire people, are we preparing them for what the work environment for working with students is? We have worked very closely with the special ed department to make sure that we provide some additional training to them before they actually hit the school site and they're cleared. Is there things that we want to continue to improve upon? Absolutely. But I think the challenge is that when people come into these positions, and you're right, they are a high turnover in some cases, that we provide them with the adequate information and training so they can go to the school site and be prepared, and then work with the special ed staff and the teaching staff prior to starting to provide that one-on-one support.
Thank you. Yeah, we don't hear from you enough, Trent, in these meetings. So I did want to say, you know, we got ourselves into we created a situation maybe 15 years ago when we went from segregated special day classes to the highly integrated model that we have today. But we did it in a certain way that required, that didn't necessarily prepare the general education teachers to effectively teach all those students, and relied heavily on aides, particularly one-on-one aides, to smooth over the process. And I'm not sure, I mean, that's kind of where we still are today, though we've made some, I think, a number of improvements, including the ones you just described. And it wouldn't, I think that may be a thing that is worth revisiting, because we've created a situation that's very, a model that's hard to effectively execute. And it's prone to the kind of issues, it's prone to a number of issues. And I think that, you know, if we had to do it over again, we might not do it this way. So that means at some point, it's probably a good thing to revisit.
Do you have any comments about this item? Okay, I already said what I had to say. Thank you. So we also have one comment for info. Wait, I don't have anything else. What do I have? Oh, Fenton. It's a student. Come on up, Fenton.
Oh, sorry.
From now on, get it in by the time the first commenter is done, but it's hard to say no to a student, yeah.
Just to comment on the aides, it was said that if anybody, like other than the parents, of course, the best people at the schools who know about the kids, like let me restart. If the kids have a one-on-one aide, that should be the person at the school who knows the most about them. However, let me just start with an example. When my brother was at PAUSD, he likes making jokes. Like, I like making jokes. It's sort of a family thing. We make a lot of jokes. And yet, however, like he was at Ohlone by 2 years, I think. And then he made a joke and his aide said, "Oh, Anderson made his first joke today." As if he was like a baby or an infant. And I think if any training is needed for aides, it's not only how to, not restrain students. It's also how to appreciate students for who they are and not to see them as infants. Sort of just to also make sure that aides care about what they're doing, because that will make it, I think, a better experience for everyone. And so not simply just information, but also just like treating students less like numbers and more like people.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to AP, our college application boot camps, which is so cool and I'm really excited about. Stephen Davis.
Yes, college boot camp. Did you know there are over 300 programs for students with intellectual disabilities in the U.S.? There are more than 20 in California and 2 here in the Bay Area. There are also many programs for students with autism. Were students with disabilities included in this program? What are we doing to prepare all of our disabled students for the possibility of college? Are we having them clean the library or getting an education and an opportunity for an education later?
Any comments on the boot camp? Any other, we've also got board calendar, but I think we don't have comments on that. We've already done board operations. We are adjourned.
Nice meeting.
Your comments for, really, I mean, I think, so who's the Barron Park teachers? There's a black teacher.